Hi, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today with us on this recorded interview with Jason Ma of 3EQ. He will be sharing with us today on the topic of why start preparing for college in sixth grade. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, this webinar is one of many webinars, activities, and resources that are part of the Keeping the Dream Alive College and Career Readiness event presented by the Santa Clara County Office of Education Parent Engagement Program. For more information, please visit us at our website, parentengagement.sccoe.org. And I'm Jamie Koo, the Parent Engagement Specialist, and I have the special privilege of hosting this interview today with Mr. Jason Ma. So welcome, Mr. Ma. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to learn from your insight and your experience. Let me go ahead and give our audience a brief introduction to our participants here. You are the founder, CEO, and chief mentor of Next Gen Leaders at 3EQ, a company that you started 13 years ago.
Not quite 13, it's about late 2011 after my previous education and ed tech company.
That's amazing. Like for the students who are listening to this interview, that your company has been alive as long as they have.
Right, and it's an honor and pleasure to be here. So let's rock and roll and let us
Absolutely.
inspire.
Absolutely. You also have an acclaimed book, Young Leaders 3.0, where you offer stories, insights, and tips for next generation leaders. And moreover, you have published a number of articles on Forbes and other magazines. But I think one thing that we need to highlight here is that you are Silicon Valley's leading member in the Business 20, the B2, which is part of the G20.
Or B20, B20.
B20, which is also part of the G20, sitting on the Employment and Education Task Force. And I said briefly because there are so many more experiences that you have listed on your website, 3eq.com, THREEEQ.com. And for our participants today, students and parents alike, you'll find a wealth of complementary information that you can explore and take action, really. So Mr. Ma, thank you so much for being with us today.
Once again, it's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting.
Yeah, so your company name is very telling of your philosophy. For the students and parents who are watching today, can you share a little bit more about 3EQ and what are these qualities and why one should seek developing these qualities as a future leader?
Yes, the premise, the thinking about the word 3EQ. Now, the number 3EQ, that was taken by someone else. So I have to use, spell it out, THREEEQ. And what I mean by that is really pragmatic, emotional, social, and leadership intelligence, 3EQ. And of course, a number of you parents and students have heard much about emotional intelligence or emotional quotient, correct? EQ. It's getting trite. But to me, my ultimate mission is really to help produce future leaders and achievers, right? Now, because as a leader, first of all, your impact, your contributions will be greater. And you're also going to earn more money or a lot more money. So it's like practical both ways. And I say pragmatic. Pragmatic is a word. It really means simply results or outcome oriented or focused, results oriented, as well as practical, okay, pragmatic. And to me, having done success coaching, mentoring, applied research, writing books, articles, and as well as being a professional leading speaker for 20,000 hours. So it's kind of like in Silicon Valley speak, right? Artificial intelligence, AI, machine learning. I've acquired lots of data, lots of experiences in my own machine. And so I became real good and deep in pattern recognition. What works, what don't work, right? Success patterns at work in terms of vision, strategies, tactics, techniques, mindsets, hard skills, soft skills, and your strategies, academic, non-academic, execution, etc. Right? So all that is baked into the equation of pragmatic, emotional, social, and leadership intelligence. Now, let me be more specific. Your emotion is really an instant reaction or manifestation of your own belief system, your assumptions, your beliefs, and your self-talk. Okay, I'm talking to both kids and parents, whether
Mhm.
you're in high school, in middle school, and parents. Okay, and your beliefs, your belief system, your self-talk, and also your physiology. Okay, your physiology meaning how your nervous system is working right now. Okay, in terms of, it's a very complex. There's biology, there's chemistry, there are a little bit of physics involved, right? And then that puts you in certain state of mind or emotional, intellectual, mental state of mind. And then you make decisions or indecisions. You
Mhm.
take actions or inactions. Then you create outcomes or results that are poor to great, right? You want to have great results most of the times, right? But sometimes you will make bad decisions as well. And that feeds back into your mindset, okay, into your operating system. We're in Silicon Valley, right? So I'm speaking some technical speak right now, just for fun right now. I'm having fun with you. And so that feeds back into your belief system and then kind of tap into your potential more and more. And then you go through these cycles, right? And you keep on acquiring experiences, good and bad, hopefully more and more good experiences, also learn from bad experiences as well. So over time, what I do as part of the core is really to help students that I select to help, client families that I select to help,
Mhm.
to really build stronger and stronger and stronger personal operating system. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Along with applications, right? Like apps. Think about your mobile phone, right? You know, you got iOS or Android, you got apps. Think about your iOS and Android as kind of like your personal operating system. How's that, right?
Right.
And it kind of upgrades itself in terms of getting faster, more reliable, more secure, more features, less bugs, correct?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then you
Yes.
download apps. Think about these apps as your skills, especially soft skills. Okay, I'll talk more about the soft skills later. And of course, even your apps, right? You set it to automatic upgrade, automatic updates and all that, bug fixes, new features, more secure, etc. Correct? So think of it in that fashion. I think it's easier for kids to understand because the Gen Z, right? They're so technical. They're so good with mobile and technology. So that's what 3EQ means. So it's very meaningful. And in terms of my own mentorship framework, I've been doing it for a long time, and I found it to work so powerfully well, right? I get very, very deep when I guide my students. I know my students more than parents know them in some ways. And parents actually love that because they know that no matter how smart the parents are, or maybe not, or maybe first to college or don't really know how the college and high school systems work, that's fine as well. There's all sorts of systems, or there's all sorts of audiences here in this group here. But they recognize that number one, the kids don't fully listen to them, correct? And
Yeah.
number two, even though if the parents went to Harvard, went to Stanford, I actually got those parents that are very smart, very successful as my clients, right? But they're humble enough to recognize that they're not the experts anymore, right? They're the expert in running the business, but that having that third-party mentorship is very important. So my framework includes visionary, directional, story, character building,
Yeah.
soft skills enhancement,
Right.
strategies and execution honing. That's academic, right? And also non-academic. What I mean by that is really um, when you look at a middle schooler's life, right? I think about middle school as pre-high school.
Mhm.
And I think about high school, think about your life as a student. You got academics, you got your curriculum, you have rigor to worry about if you're high achieving,
Mhm.
want to go to top elite schools like Ivy League, Stanford, Berkeley. You could go to other schools as well. It's great. In fact, there's some great successful people who do not have to go to top schools. That's fine, right? Depends on who you are. And then there are standardized testing you have to worry about, SAT, ACT, SAT subject test. If you're very driven and high achieving, right, kids, don't believe a lot of the elite schools telling you test optional. things don't work like that, okay? And I'll tell you more, because how they think is that they want more applications, so they can kind of lower the admit rate, which is a marketing metric to them. And then the other marketing metric is really yield rate. They want to have high rankings on the US News and Reports, plus all sorts of, other goals and stuff like that, right? So I think I'm gonna stop here and let you ask more questions so I can address it more precisely through
Yeah.
the follow-on questions. How's that?
But it definitely sounds like what you're offering here in terms of 3 EQ is for the student to really understand that college is not their destination. Developing them as a person is the ultimate goal here. And so I see that, in your article, the Why Start Preparing for College in Sixth Grade, the one that's published in the Forbes magazine, that you talk about rituals being very important, specifically the periodic counseling to kind of make sure that this development is on track.
Yeah.
Parents who want to start this career, college preparedness conversation with their kids, what are some of those topics that they should talk about together? And especially, in the Silicon Valley, what are some of the accessible resources that parents and students can leverage?
Okay. It's a great start off question. Let's start with, say, sixth grade, seventh grade, middle school kids, right? And that was an article I wrote for Forbes. I got over 1.5, 1.6 million views on my Forbes articles. Um, and a lot of it's about college admissions and college prep and leadership and entrepreneurship, but a lot of college planning, application, admission stuff, right? Especially at an elite level. Now, in this article, I intentionally, while I started preparing for college in sixth grade, I intentionally did not write about academics or testing or college admissions. I intentionally wrote more about the human side, the soft side, like habits, right? And I included as anecdotes my two daughters back then. They were 14 and 11 years old back then. And they are now 23 and 20. One is a Google software engineer into her third year, and one is a Wharton junior at the University of Pennsylvania. They're happy, compassionate young leaders, right? That's my greatest joy, is that I produce a happy and compassionate kids and happy and compassionate students, right? That's who I am. Who's gonna be very impactful, make big bucks, right? Also get into top schools. And what I noticed is that, my daughter, she was a sophomore back then. Of course, I gave her guidance and stuff like that because I'm a father first, a
Mhm.
chief mentor second, right? Of course, with my students, I'm chief mentor, that's it. But father first, chief mentor second. So with my mentor or college counselor, life coach, leadership coach, and pre-career coach, all integrated into one human being, I guided them academically and non-academically. One thing that I noticed, especially about my middle schooler, my sixth grader, my 11-year-old Lydia back then, I noticed that, okay, the kid, a lot of kids, right? A lot of kids are bright, but I noticed that she had a very bad habit, over spending time on devices. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Parents, students. So I call it device addiction, social media addiction. It's like getting out of control, right? My wife and I had a deal. Is that, honey, she's a great chief nurturer, right? She's very kind, one of the kindest persons you'll ever meet. And I said, okay, when she turns 13, then I'm going to take over and mentor her, right? Kind of take her, ask if she's a former student of mine. And then, but I said, you know what? It's not working, honey. And then she said that, honey, okay, take her on, get her to be your student, right? So at age 11, I started guiding her. And the first goal that I had is to help her transform, to reduce a bad habit
Mhm.
into a neutral, and then convert the neutral into a strength, and then a strength into a super strength. It takes time, correct?
Yeah.
You can never put a kid into a microwave. You press 1 minute and a perfect human being pops out. Things don't work like that. It's a slow cooking process. Uh, that's with high quality guidance to accelerate that. So along the way, I applied a bit of I got many repertoire of techniques and tactics, right? Based on the situation of the kid. Everything's hyper personalized based on who the student is and the family and their values and principles. And sometimes I even coach and pull aside powerful C-suite leaders that went to Harvard, Stanford, and have to guide them on doing things a little bit differently to
Mhm.
support the kids more effectively, you see. So because sometimes some parents are like tiger parents, right? Some parents are kind of laissez-faire, and a lot of parents are in between. So every person's different. So back to my 11-year-old, then I said, honey, okay, great, you could totally do your thing, but let's promise me that you're gonna limit your device addiction to 10 hours per week. I think it's about 168 hours per week. I forgot. 112. If you sleep 8 hours per day, you get about 112 hours of wake time.
Mhm.
So if you limit 10 hours of wasting time, entertainment, social media, back then it's like Instagram, blah, 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 Facebook. Of course, right now it's about TikTok as well, right?
Yeah.
And other things. 10 hours is it's manageable. It's divide by 7. It's only 1 point something hours per day. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They need that. It's like this is part of their body. That's certainly you cannot take away. This part of a body, right?
And certainly
So
these days with all of the distance learning and working that we're doing.
especially right now with Zoom, right? And
Yeah.
it's crazy. And on Zoom, Eric Yuan, the founder CEO, is an old friend of mine. I saw him give birth to Zoom 9 years ago in a boardroom in my previous company, right? Because I brought him in. And I've been using Zoom for 9 years. So by the way, hey guys, welcome to work from home. I've been doing that for 9 years. Okay, work from hotels. I do that all the time. I go to London. I got a meeting scheduled with a student 8,000 miles away. It goes clockwork. It doesn't stop. It's like very fluid. I call it the virtual mobile global office, right? Something like that. Very fluid motion. So back to Lydia, that's how it works. And then keep conditioning, but you have to do that with lots of love,
Hmm.
genuine, deep love with the student. Not yell at them all the time. I don't do that, right? But you have to do it with a strong foundation of real love. Without that, the kid is not going to listen to you. You
Hmm.
see? Because by mother nature, your child on average, even though you're a billionaire or you're like on the opposite, it doesn't really matter. On average, your child will never fully listen to you.
Hmm.
Number one, you're not the expert. If you think you're the expert, it's delusional. Things don't work like that. Okay. So have to be discerning and wise. So back to Lydia, over time, I noticed her habits improve, right? And been doing real good academically. The rest is history, really. So academically, non-academically, should perform real well. In a high school student, let's think about the components, right?
Yeah.
The mechanical components of the life. Now, a middle school, especially a high school student's life, and somewhat college students as well, more independent. The life is really more seasonal. Would you agree?
Yeah.
My life is not seasonal, but your life is seasonal, right? First semester, second semester, then the summer. And once you hit the summer between sophomore to junior year and a summer between junior to senior year, those are very important summers if you want to go for very competitive schools applications. They look at, some schools even have essays. What have you done in the last summer and why is it important to you, right? So it's about your schoolwork. For the high achievers, it's about the rigor of your curriculum or coursework. It's about your standardized testing. It's about preparing a great story.
Hmm.
And then you have to tell the story via long and short essays and other writings and about yourself. If you apply to college, it's very normal for you to end up writing dozens of long and short essays plus other short takes based on applying to 10 schools or
Right.
more or less, even more schools is very normal these days. Okay.
Yeah.
And along with that, interviews, right? And then rec letters are very important. I guide students to really build strong relationships with teachers, especially certain types of teachers in your junior, senior year,
Mhm.
especially with the classes that are going to be meaningful in the rec letters. But it also helps you hone the soft skills. I think we're going to cover more about soft skills later, right, Jamie?
Right.
I should move on with other questions, should I?
Yeah. So just to
Okay.
recap really quickly, what I hear you saying about in the career college planning between parent and child is to really help the child identify what their weaknesses are or what might be hindering them from being successful, and then
Mhm.
just making a plan so they can fine tune along the way to make improvements. Right.
Yeah, and be very encouraging. The
Yeah.
most important thing the parents would do is to apply your resources
Hmm.
and be very loving, be very supportive. Okay,
Right.
don't. I mean, if you're already a tiger parent, I think you know who you are. Don't overdo it. I see some parents overdoing things where they treat the kids like a product. sometimes like a commodity. They even have like KPIs or OKRs, right? Key performance index or outcomes, key results, right? Like Google John Doerr thing. But here's the thing. Your kid is not a product, okay? Your kid is not a technology. Your kid is a tender human being. It's a very different thing. So be very loving, supportive. Don't have these external measures. It's gonna freak them out. Okay, you're gonna overstress them. I know kids are very stressed, many of them, anxiety ridden. Some of them are depressed. A few even worse. Okay, I'm telling you, in high school, in college, be very careful. And so that's one of my strong advice. And we're gonna talk later on. I think your questions is gonna ask me about
Mhm.
what's really going on in some of the elite Ivy League schools and all that, why you need to prepare a little bit more wisely in high school, right? In
Yeah.
middle school.
Yeah, let me go ahead and just back up a little bit more, talking about resources for the middle school student before we
Okay,
get to the high school one.
okay.
I'm a former middle school language arts teacher, so I'm really
Mm,
appreciative of your mentioning
okay.
that reading books widely will give them a good start. We're talking
Yes,
about the tweens.
yes. Books. Let me give
What are
you
they-
some couple of books. I'm not gonna over jam you. I read, I go through a book a week, okay?
Mhm.
Equivalent of a book a week. And my kids read a lot. Of course, these days we listen to books quite a bit because it's very convenient, right? Audiobooks and all that. And in my Audible, I got about 150, 160 books in here. Some of them are my kids. Okay, it's like this machine loves to learn, right?
Yeah.
And part of the things that I encourage students and parents, right, is that develop a mindset and core skill where learning is like entertainment. To me, I love to learn. As a tail end baby boomer, I know Mr. Ma looks like I just graduated high school. Is my favorite joke, right? But I'm actually a tail end baby boomer. Kids love me because I act like a Gen Z. And I'm like that, by the way. My energy level is like sometimes my energy, the kids go, Mr. Ma, you got more energy than me. That's because I love you. Okay, I love you. Now, so readings are important. One book that I really enjoy is called Seven Habits of uh,
Highly
Effective Teenagers.
well, and that's the same one I was thinking about.
Teenagers.
I use that from in my classroom too.
I loved it. I read that more than 10 years ago. I love that.
Excellent.
Seven Habits of Effective Teenagers.
Yes.
Okay, pick it up, audiobook or read, whatever. Some books I recommend getting the audiobook because the narrator is so good.
Yeah.
And by listening to books and podcasts, actually improves your speech. Okay. Mr. Ma is a professional. I'm a professional speaker, which is a sideshow. I'm represented by a lot of leading speaker bureaus, right? I improve my speaking skills partly by just pouring hundreds of hours, right, on audio, over 1,000 hours easily over the decade, right? Audiobooks, podcasts, right? It's a part of how I self-train myself. So that's one. Another one, of course, pick up my book, Young Leaders 3.0, not to self promote, but it's very practical. I
Mhm.
guarantee you're going to enjoy it because you're going to see 23 Gen Z, millennial young leaders, 17 to 24-year-olds. One of them is going to be a billionaire, by the way, right now. He's 27 years old, building a very powerful tech company. And a couple of them is going to be a centimillionaire. It's just insane. These kids are in their 20s right now, all in their 20s. I wrote it 6 years ago and rich in stories, insights, some tips. But it's a book, right? You can never go deep compared to one-on-one mentorship, but pick it up.
Mhm.
You're gonna enjoy it. Very touchy because it reflects part of the soft side, right? In addition to test scores and grades and GPA and getting in Ivy League, I wanted, just to kind of for capturing attention, I intentionally brought in the majority of the majority or 23 kids are my past mentees, and I got one or two kids each from each one of the 8 Ivy League schools,
Mhm.
right? They are Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Columbia, Penn, Dartmouth, Brown, Cornell, Stanford, MIT, USC, Georgetown, Berkeley, blah, 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 a bunch, even Oxford in the UK, and to showcase them. And then each one of them's got different backgrounds and different aspirations. But it's so treat that as one of your bedtime readings. How's that? As a sideshow, as a compliment. Another book that I would, there are so many others. If you want to get something a bit more mature, but also fun to listen to or read, I recommend getting the audiobook version written by the late, great, makes me sad to say, Tony Hsieh, who was the founding CEO of Zappos, who passed away in his 40s. but get the audiobook because his voice is so beautiful, so pleasing. It's called Delivering Happiness, about Zappos, about our culture. Okay, so that would appeal to both parents and students. And I got so many others, but I don't want to give a laundry list in a thing. Okay,
And you know
so a
what?
lot of podcasts.
You have a lot of reading materials on your website as well. And a
You
lot
can
of
spend half a day enjoying it.
yeah, and you have a lot of videos as well of some
Yeah, a lot of videos.
illustrations. But I feel after even looking over all of those articles and videos, I think there's a couple of themes that we can dive into.
Okay.
The first is that students and parents need to think beyond just getting a college acceptance letter.
Yes.
And then the second one is that parents can help students prepare for failure.
Yes.
Can you
Yes.
expand a little bit on those two?
Yes. Let me work backwards. Let me take you to college.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the audience is here. I know that you have all sorts of families and students. And if I speak too fast, hopefully your translation is going to help, Jamie. So I'm talking to all sorts of students from, let's say, also from laissez-faire parents all the way to tiger parents, right? And everyone in between. Now, it's easier to talk about these very competitive schools, right? Because of course, all of us heard about college admissions scandal and all the crazy things going on. But a lot of things you read in the media, you hear from other people are deceptive. Be very careful, okay? Once you go into a very, very hyper competitive, I use the word hyper competitive because it's true. Face the music, face the fact, it is. Um, and You get into these elite Ivy League schools, or Stanford, MIT, Caltech, Chicago, Northwestern, Johns Hopkins, right, etc., Berkeley Engineering. You know, the fact of the matter is that it's going to be very enjoyable, but it's hyper competitive. If you are amongst the top students at Poly High School, at Gunn High School, at Mission San Jose, at Hawker, at Menlo School, at all sorts of schools in Silicon Valley. Okay, but once you go to these top schools, guess what? A lot of kids experience imposter syndrome
Mm,
because all of a sudden you become one of many super competitors, right?
mhm,
Then you socialize, you make friends, you learn, you contribute, get into activities, try to get internships, build your skills, build your resume, and then go to grad school or go straight to work, right? That's your life, right? And enjoy it. You might experience your first or second boyfriend, girlfriend, and enjoy the college life. It's very important. But one thing I really notice is that lots of kids, not my students, okay, they are hyper stressed. They are just ridden, anxiety filled, and some depressed, a few even worse, okay, suicidal.
mhm,
And that's why, to me, if you are driven high schoolers, like at least for my own students, and including my own kids that are doing quite well and happy, one half of the equation of importance to me is not, oh, yeah, of course, I'll help you get into the highest level schools as possible based on guidance, repertoire, and all sorts of things, right?
mhm,
But number two is help you build a strong mental, emotional, little bit of a spiritual foundation. I don't mean religion, but your mind and soul and physiology, your OS, okay? So that you have the mindset and the skills to be very competitive without stressing out and be happy.
mhm,
I'm just being very practical with you. So
mhm,
you go to the high schoolers page or the parents page at the 3Q website. I talk about that. And there's some links as well. There's some articles that talk about that as well. Just go through that, read that, okay? You could do some homework, go to my parents page. And I'm very kind of direct with parents. I'm like a fiduciary and holistic, right? Holistic. Parents, here's some it's like myopia, college admission myopia is what I see, right? I mean, you hear that all the time. You talk to a lot of college consultants out there, the media, they talk about college admissions, college admissions, college admissions, right? I think it's very short-sighted, very narrow, frankly speaking. I'm so good in what I do in elite college admissions counseling. You put the former dean of Ivy League school, former dean of admissions, right next to me. I'll eat him alive. Here's why. I say that without shamelessly because everything they know about all the tricks of the trade for college admissions, I know already. Been doing that for a long, long time. Okay, almost perfected it, number one. But number two, just as important, is what they cannot do is integrated next-gen leadership, integrated high-end career positioning, integrated personal success life coaching, all integrated even though when you're high schooler and middle schooler. Then you build compound the foundation. By the time you're at college, you don't have those issues. And another thing that I see, Jamie, which is very interesting, not my students, lots of kids that I see, I'm telling you, former Ivy League students, Ivy League alums, Stanford alums, okay? They're in the mid-20s, in the late 20s, 30-year-old, they're in jobs that are actually not that impressive to me. How come you're not up there yet? Seriously, how come you're still here? You're still not up there yet. What happened? You see? You get my point? So it kind of depends on the life stage. To me, that's why I encourage students and parents, don't think at college. Think through college as part of the journey. Because the next 80 years, including middle school, high school, college, and your career is going to be many, many, many decades. That's where the bucks, that's where the real world is at, right? I know that some parents, right, especially Tiger parents, they have pride and they want, hey, my kid goes to Harvard. Kind of reflects nicely on me. I get that part, right? A little bit ego. I got some of that in the past, right? But it's more important to really see your kid to be truly successful for the rest of her career and personally. And later on, they're going to have their own families, right? So build a very strong foundation in addition to getting into as high level of a college or university possible. Does that answer your question, Jamie?
Yeah. Yeah. So the college experience, the even what we may think of at the moment may be a failure, but the really long-term like learning opportunities that will set the foundation for how they can succeed the long run.
Correct. Yeah, and I give you another tip, another insight. Okay, even at a B20, so I sit on the Employment and Education Task Force at a B20, which officially represents the G20, which is very powerful. So all the presidents and prime ministers, top 20, right? U.S., China, EU, and Germany, and India, etc. They're there. We capture their attention. We push policy recommendations to them. There's about 7 task forces. This year is led by Italy. Last year, Saudi Arabia, right? So I'm in the, it used to be called the Future Work and Education Task Force last year, but this year they switched back to Employment Education Task Force. So I even promote, okay, the importance of learnability. What that means is that you learn quickly, you learn new complex stuff quickly, you like to learn. It's a skill by itself. And then being very adaptable, being agile, not, of course, a famous Stanford professor wrote a book called Mindset, Growth Mindset, right? I call it beyond that, not just growth mindset, it growth and contribution mindset. I go deeper than that, you see. Not just EQ, but 3 EQ, right? I go deeper than that, but also very practical, very fun, very playful with my students as well. And so I promote that as core thing in your mindset. And then you got critical thinking, right? You're going to hear a lot about from these top schools. Well, oh, we want kids with good critical thinking, independent thinking. Sure, check. Problem solving, check. Creativity, check. Communications, check. Team skills, collaboration, people skills, check. Within communication, one-on-one, listening, self-talk, of course, personal essay writing, very important. You're going to learn quite a bit from good teachers, especially AP Lit, AP Lang, right? You pick up your expository third person, second person writing skills through these teachers. But the first person essay writing skills is one of the skills that you will hone, at least my students, along with applying for competitive summer camps, competitive internship, of course, competitive college apps, right? And so it's like hitting multiple birds with one stone. But along the way, always conscious to hone their pragmatic 3 EQ and the 4S, you see? So that once they get in, they feel less denominator. It's like less burden, they're happier, My kids are happy kids, So a lot of my students are happy kids. They go to Ivy League, right? They're happy kids. They're not stressed out like a lot of kids.
Right.
Make sense?
Yeah. Well, Mr. Ma, you have shared with us so many gems, and I hope that the participants who are watching today will dive into your website and find out more, or maybe even rewatch this video of our of our conversation today. But you know, our event is actually called Keeping the Dream Alive. And we know that, you know, 2020, maybe going into 2021, there's still going to be some disruptions in the education process. Uh, maybe as we wrap up today, maybe just offer one kind of educational insight for students who really want to continue keeping their dream alive.
Okay. Now, first of all, kids and parents, you are not alone. Okay. You are not alone. I know that many of you feel lonely sometimes, a bit stressed and a little bit anxious because you haven't seen your friends in person physically for a long time, or a little bit more restricted, and you've been on Zoom and other online learning all the time. It gets a little bit tiring, but keep the faith.
Yeah.
Okay. Be hopeful. Okay. Be loving about yourself, be loving in your family, support your parents, and your parents, of course, you support and love your kids. Okay. And I know that many schools and many coursework via online is not perfect. Nothing is perfect, but that's how life is. Life is not perfect. Life would always have difficulties, sometimes very difficult stuff, sometimes light difficulties. Hang in there. But if you put in the work, if you truly, really make a promise and commitment to yourself to truly learn, even though you may not like some of the teachers, some of them suck, blah, 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 some of them are great. I know that, I heard that a trillion times. You know, keep the faith, supplement learning by going other, doing some, you know, books and reading and learn from all sorts of ways. Your different ways of learning, correct? Now, one tip I want to give you, even for middle school kids,
Mhm.
certainly for high school kids, start early, reduce your stress, then you achieve greater success. Okay, so you learn, you work, you play, you live more happily. One practical thing is to start doing college research, not to be academic, but for fun. Go to some schools you like, check out their programs, the degrees, their curriculum, their courses, the professors, the activities that they have. Just be curious. Just be intellectually and emotionally curious. Okay. So maybe replace some of the bad habits you have, wasting time on entertainment, because just pure self-entertainment is not going to really help you. I know that some games you have to hang with students. There's some critical thinking involved, right? You know, there's a lot of good games out there, online video, etc. It's great, but limit your time. Try to catch yourself becomes it become a negative addiction for you. Got it? Because here's a reality. We're in Silicon Valley. A lot of these games and social media, it's got very addictive algorithms built in. A lot of people that are their employees are actually PhDs in psychology and all that, okay? They've been honing, perfecting the psychology, the algorithms to capture your attention. So don't get caught up in that. Overcome that, recognize that, be wiser, okay? You're in control. Don't be controlled by them. So lead your own destiny. Does it make sense to you?
Absolutely.
Parents, be very supportive.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Ma. This has been so insightful. I, appreciate everything that you have shared with us. And I definitely want to also encourage our participants today to continue conversing with us here at the Santa Clara County Office of Education. If you have any questions or feedback, to visit our bit.ly. That's bit.ly backslash KTDA feedback. That stands for Keeping the Dream Alive. And so thank you so much for joining us, and Mr. Ma, for all of your time today.
Well, thank you for inviting again. I hope it was helpful and inspiring and practical too.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much.